This morning I'd like to start by indicating last week I mentioned that the regulation with the border control that was signed. I had this week a meeting with Mr. Nico Schoof, who is the replacement of Mr. Aaron Archambault on the ground as far as to be dealing with the recovery. We touch base on the recovery procedure, the recovery progress, and just had a open discussion as how we would move forward. I also met with Mr. Hans Vroeg and Chris Heize, the commanders of the Koninklijke Marechaussee. That was also like a pre-meeting discussing of the approach that would be taken in the execution of the regulation that was signed on border control. What will happen is that a work conference would be planned. We were looking and hoping that this could have been taken place sometime next week, but it doesn't look like that logistically would be possible. So it is more in the planning to do that sometime in the beginning of January. And that conference would be where on the departmental levels, like police, customs, etc., from both the Netherlands and St. Martin would be getting together to work out the details, the plan of approach, as is mentioned in Article 4 of the regulation. I read today in the newspaper that the regulation was not sent on to Parliament yet, the signed copy of the regulation. That is a miss from my side. I would make sure that both the press and Parliament get a version of the signed copy of the regulation. But we are in the stage now, as I mentioned, discussing how we would proceed in working out, making a plan of action to do the execution of that regulation. In the Council of Ministers meeting yesterday, the legislation on the integrity chamber was discussed and approved. As you know, it came back from the Council of Advice, and a response to the advice of the Council of Advice had to be prepared by the government and approved by the Council of Ministers. That was done yesterday, and as I speak now, that document has been sent to the office of His Excellency the Governor to be forwarded to Parliament. So as far as the government is concerned, the issue with the legislation on the integrity chamber has been finalized and would now be in the hands of Parliament to deal with. There has also been some comments about that that it has taken long. I would like to remind everyone that there are procedures when dealing with legislation, procedures that are regulated by law. The different bodies that have to deal with the legislation, the process that has to take place, and we made sure that we follow those processes, because if we don't, and someone would appeal or protest the manner in which it went, then it may result in us having to start from scratch. So, like I said, now that document has been sent on to Parliament via His Excellency the Governor, and we as government consider that our part has been done as far as the two conditions set by The Hague regarding the recovery fund. We are not going to wait until Parliament has approved that document. You can continue in the planning, and we have had discussions about how can we, first of all, the issue, how is this fund going to be managed? How would projects be able to be submitted? What projects, etc., etc. What we have done in the Council of Ministers meeting is to have decided that we would try to centralize as much as possible the whole process for us. So now the Office of the Prime Minister, of the Minister of General Affairs, would function as a coordinating office dealing with these projects. Now, the setup, and I mentioned this in the last press briefing, it is absolutely not the case that as soon as a document is signed that a bucket of money is going to be poured into St. Martin and into projects. It's a process that has to take place. The setup that is being looked at by the Netherlands is to have the World Bank coordinate the whole issue with the projects, etc. Now, how that is going to go has not been determined yet. So the argumentations that were made that there's a key back by the government, that is absolutely not the case. As a matter of fact, in the coming week, next week, around the 14th and 15th, it is in the planning that the Director General of the Recovery, Mr. Hans Leitens, would be on the island, and also representatives of the World Bank would be here. A work conference is being planned with them, with senior civil servants, the SGs, and to discuss that whole process. It is expected also that they would meet with the Council of Ministers to elucidate and discuss exactly how that process is going to take place with the involvement of the World Bank. So even that part of the recovery has not been finalized and has not been determined yet. There were no agreements signed already between The Hague and the World Bank, nor with St. Martin and the World Bank. That process is taking place. However, all parties realize that the situation that, especially with the homes and that some folks are living in, cannot wait until we have that whole big project totally organized. So we are looking at seeing how certain projects that are easily implemented and managed, how these projects can start taking place. Those projects, we refer to them as the low-hanging fruit project. And already some of those projects have been identified and can get going quickly. And they're not all projects that initiated with government. You have projects identified, for instance, by the White and Yellow Cross, by the Red Cross, by the St. Martin Development Bank, etc. Development Fund, sorry. They have projects, also have identified projects that can be readily executed. Can give an example. The White and Yellow Cross, for instance, they do district nursing. And as such, they are very much aware and have been conducting inventory from their clients on the conditions of their homes, for instance. They know who they are, where they are, what are those conditions, and as such, definitely, at least for that group, something can be undertaken to help alleviate the situation that these folks are in. A project like that would not have to wait until all the agreements, etc., are in place with the World Bank and The Hague for us to get moving. Also, from the Council of Ministers and the respective ministers, we would be identifying certain projects in that category that can also be presented for financing. Now, there is a request from Parliament for the Council of Ministers to appear in Parliament, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday to discuss this, this issue, the projects, identified projects. While I have total respect for Parliament and acknowledge the need for coinciding or synchronizing and getting good broad support for those projects that would be submitted, I wonder if a public meeting in Parliament is the right place to have such a discussion. I think when approaching these type of issues, we should be able to sit and talk to each other without the necessary cameras for the political grandstanding. But that is my personal opinion. Nevertheless, the Council of Ministers would attend that meeting, and we would have those discussions. I mentioned that work conference would take place on next week with Mr. Lightons and the World Bank. Prior to that, on Monday, I will be meeting with the SGs that would be attending that meeting for us to sit and exchange some thoughts and ideas as to how we would approach that meeting. In the meeting, in the work conference that is going to be held, it is not on ministers' level, like I said, is on senior civil servants level, so the SGs would be attending that, but it is always good to have a synchronization of feedback between the SGs and the ministers.
That my ham you put it apart. Christmas morning. I don't like it dry, make sure that it's so. Christmas morning. Girl, don't get a stroke, all I want is poor. Christmas morning. Sing along, Christmas morning. Neighbor, Christmas morning. Oh, Melda, Christmas morning.
I would like to inform the general public that some of the activities that were held during the St. Martin Day celebration and the Road to St. Martin Day celebrations was an art project. The post-Irma art project resulted in several boards, which we are now putting up for auction. It's titled the Post-Irma Art Auction. It's a project spearheaded by the ministry, and it's part of the hashtag St. Martin Strong campaign, which has been facilitated internally by General Affairs Lucinda Ardain, along with the Education on the Move project leader Angelique Rumu-Martis from the Division Education Innovations. Several primary schools were invited to participate in this project, which was done as one of the activities leading up to the St. Martin Day celebrations. The primary school students, under the guidance of their art teachers, were tasked to creatively express how they felt post-Irma. The art teachers were requested to assist the students with getting their ideas and feelings on large 4x4 wooden art boards. This process was not only creative and fun, but also very therapeutic for the students as it helped them to process their emotions in a very creative manner post-Hurricane Irma. A total of 12 primary schools took part and delivered beautiful artworks, some of which were on display on St. Martin Day. We actually received a few after St. Martin Day. And we also had them on display on Sunday during the Thanksgiving service on the walkway towards the building. On behalf of the Ministry ECYS, we are cordially inviting the general public to the art auction will be held right here in this room on Saturday, December 9th, 2017, from 6 to 9 p.m. So reminder for the art auction where the works of our students can be auctioned, can be bought, and of course the proceeds would go directly to the schools for which they were made. So come out and assist, show your appreciation for the students of St. Martin and their artwork, and you can proudly display these at your place of business, or maybe you can opt to have it displayed at the school itself, but then the donation will be noted for posterity. The Department of Education would also like to make known, as you may have seen via other press releases, that the pavilions, 2 of the 3 then, which had been received by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, which had been transported via the Karel Doorman from the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science in the Netherlands, were one was officially handed over to the Charlotte Brookson Academy and the other to the Mac CSE in the Ebenezer on Friday, December 1st. Some delay, and I have been coming weekly and updating on this, but apparently that maybe isn't clear to all. Some delay has been noted in getting these pavilions to be usable here. The first delay, of course, the preparatory works that had been needed prior to erecting them, which was executed by Vromi with the assistance of Winwood Roads. Thereafter, of course, electrical lines, water lines, and sewage lines had to be laid. A further challenge which became very apparent upon the erection was that the air conditioning units that had been sent, very large air conditioning units, were incompatible with our electrical supply here on St. Martin, and they were returned when the ship went back the last time. We did then go into deliberations with Oceanway in the Netherlands, and they did agree to finance the purchase of the AC units that were done here. Some challenges, these were installed and replaced, and so the electrical systems were finalized. However, we're noticing, of course, in practice that they are still being challenged by trips within the electricity, and so some tweaking is still needed by electrical engineers and GEBE to ensure that the load can be carried once the classrooms are in full operation. For the Charlotte Brookson Academy, there are 6 classrooms and 2 offices. It was adjusted to meet the needs of the school, which had no location. The other pavilions are simply divided into 6 classrooms and are located close to the other schools so that the students can make use of the other facilities at their schools. Yes, so we did incur some challenges in getting it set up. We appreciate the gift of the Netherlands, but it required quite some work to actually make it operational. We are totally grateful. The schools are totally grateful, and we will continue to monitor the usage of these pavilions to ensure that they're being optimally used. So the keys to the front and back doors were handed over, as well as the classrooms and restrooms at CBA, and for the classrooms and the front and back doors at MAC CSE. We are also moving forward with the continued preparation for the third one that was placed on the current property of the Prince William Alexander School in St. Peter's, which is close to the St. Martin Academy. There was some discussions back and forth with the board, which have now been clarified, and so that pavilion and its preparation will also continue so that the students of the St. Martin Academy can also make use of that. As I mentioned also, we'd received a 4th pavilion, not necessarily called that, but a tent structure from the United States, and at the time it came, it was really like an unknown donor. So some research had to be done in terms of being able to ascertain and get the necessary information to be able to erect such. The discussions also ensued on whether the company that donated it would send the technical assistance, because in the meantime, the technical assistance from the Netherlands, which had erected the 3 from the Netherlands, had already left, as there were no proper manuals and instructions for doing so with the tent structure. So that one had been intended for the St. Martin Vocational Training School. As a matter of fact, since their 4 classrooms have had so many delays, and with the new registration, them having more students again, they're also having some issues with restrooms, and so we are aiming to send the restroom that we did not use for the MAC CSE pavilion up there, as well as to finalize the construction of the 4th tent. That one, though, did not come with any interior flooring, etc., and partitioning. So that would then, of course, be another project in and of itself to get it operational. However, we continue as the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports to try to meet the needs in these trying times, to be able to continue to provide education to the up to 80–90% of the students that have actually gone back to school, and schools continue to meet the needs of both teachers and students in making education possible. And much success with that in the last couple of weeks prior to the Christmas vacations. The USM, to update on that situation, as mentioned in the last press release from the ministry, we had submitted a proposal to the USM to the tune of initial injection of 230,000 Antillean guilders. Their request had been for an injection of 3 times 250. Upon perusal of their request or the budget, 2 parts of the budget line were already included in their regular subsidy, and so that's why we are looking at 230,000. 3 injections. They will continue, and they have continued to receive their subsidy monthly of 63,750 guilders. They had indicated that their board would meet on Sunday, which they did, and that we would receive the feedback on Monday, which we received yesterday in writing. The department is processing this information. Of course, in a MOU situation, both parties have to agree to the agreements as well as the conditions, and as such, we requested a meeting with the university today, which they were not able to do, and they suggested tomorrow. However, we are in Parliament all day tomorrow, so we are still trying to ascertain if today is still possible at some point for us to sit together, the Department of Education with the board of the USM, to hash out the differences within the MOU that no immediate agreement had been reached on. What has been agreed upon, though, is that they would receive the 3 times 320,000 guilders, and that we would process and work on their, that's at least the basic things we see are in agreement. Their request for the increase in structural subsidy, which then should kick in once these 3 installments. So only these 3 months will be then there to be able to process that. And so making sure and tying down those action points and timelines within the MOU is very, very important. What I would like to reassure the students and staff at USM is that government remains committed to keeping the USM as our only line of higher education at that level here on St. Martin, especially for students who, for one reason or the other, are unable to leave the country, especially for older students who are going back to school, who are working, have their grown children or their small ones, and are sacrificing to be able to do so. This remains key for us here at Government of St. Martin. However, to understand that we thought it was a seriously urgent issue last week. However, the university took the time until Sunday to do this, and to be able to finalize the advice for the exact approval by COM, while COM provisionally agrees with what I have presented, they have to be able to agree on a document which is approved by both parties. And as such, we need the legal affairs as well as we've also received legal affairs advice yesterday. And so we're burning the midnight oil as government to try and get everything incorporated that is necessary legally to be able to hold the USM Foundation accountable for the funds which it had received. Interesting to note is that an agreement is already in place since 2014 where USM and the government of St. Martin is concerned, and many, in looking back at that agreement, many of what we're asking for was already stated then. So it really behooves the university to be able to live up to its part of the bargain as well, in terms of, yes, we need money, but in order to receive that money, certain obligations also lay on the university, and we look forward to positively resolving this issue. And with that, I will be seated and welcome any questions. Thank you.
The minister would like to make one last statement.
Yes, I would also like to make a statement, especially since the Minister of Tiat and Vromi are not present, that several plans are also on the way to prepare. We did have our Thanksgiving service last Sunday where, you know, the start of the Christmas season came into play. We had our first cruise ships yesterday and Monday and yesterday, yesterday and today. I think I saw a ship out there today. It was yesterday and Monday. Monday and Tuesday. And St. Martin is really smiling again. And I think that really promoting the hope of Christmas around the island is very, very important for the morale of the people. And so as culture minister, we usually plan some events for Christmas. So look out for the Christmas calendar of events. We're collaborating with Tiat and Vromi in terms of getting front and back street decorated, but as culture minister, we are looking at going into the districts. As I'd mentioned prior to the St. Martin Day celebrations, we had a planting project in place. Our agriculturist took sick, but together with EPIC and the rest of the team, we will still continue to go out there in the different districts and plant. We're asking the community leaders, the students, anyone with interest in the communities that we have seen post-Irma on such a large scale to come out. When you see us out there, help us to clean up the districts and start the decorating process. So both ministries, Tiat and myself, have pledged to assist communities that would like to pick a spot to be able to decorate for Christmas, to have that within your district. So it's not just a front street and back street, and where the tourists are, we would like you to have Christmas wherever you are as well. So look out for those. We will be posting the dates. We have a very fun-filled, I must say, Christmas celebration planned, and of course we're aiming to keep the budget down on that, but public participation, as we saw with our St. Martin Day Cultural Parade and St. Martin Day celebration, makes the celebration, not so much everything else on top of it. So we look forward to seeing the general public out to these events. Thank you.